Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So Oscar, thanks so much for chatting with us today. Yeah, I sent you this list of questions about bonsai and like how our culture is sort of represented in it, and it's kind of stemming from this idea of the upcoming World Cup and how kind of soccer is this global phenomenon that's played in all countries around the world and is really this important kind of cultural component to a lot of people. I'm curious, first of all, just are you a soccer fan? Like, what's your relationship to soccer?
I go to a match every now and then, but I wouldn't consider myself a big fan.
Okay.
Uh, but if the Netherlands are in, and usually they are, then sure, it's a big thing here.
Yeah. So, because you're in the Netherlands, and so you're born in the Netherlands. So that's where you're from.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Born and raised. Yeah.
So, kind of thinking about the culture of the Netherlands, right? Having grown up there and being from there, like, how would you describe the core values of your culture? Like, what are their sort of core kind of beliefs that kind of you think guide that culture?
Right. Yeah, these are deep questions, right? But I think because I'm sure I gave it a thought, right? I think
Yeah.
one of the things that really shaped the Netherlands is that we've always been a very open country. Trade has always been important for us. Like our golden age was the 18th century, where we had this big wooden boats that went out to get spices from everywhere, and so from very early on, relatively early on, we were always open to other cultures and in touch with other cultures. So I think that DNA is still locked in. If you look at the bonsai world as well, one of the big international magazines is Dutch. One of the big bonsai websites is Dutch. A lot of wholesale bonsai companies that trade through the entire Europe are Dutch. So we had a hub in trade for a long time, and I think it also is still going on for bonsai.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, do you know like how, I mean, with the Dutch, it makes sense. Like how early were people of Chinese or Japanese cultures coming to the Netherlands? I know, a lot of people were going there, but I was just thinking about like how America
Yeah,
has a
the other
lot
way around.
of Japan and China. Like,
Yeah,
is
I'm
there
not
is there a
sure.
large or what's like the Japanese and Chinese kind of population within the Netherlands?
I don't think it's too big. I think our community of Indonesian people is much larger. I'm not really quite sure, but I think the history here is that mostly it was the Dutch sailors and traders that went to Japan and to China to trade, and not as much the other way around. So I think we are more interested in them than they might have been in us because we're such a small country as well, right? So one of the famous places in Japan was Deshima, a small island just off the coast of Japan when Japan was still entirely closed off for foreigners. They were just not allowed to go there at all. There was a small island where the Dutch had a right of being, that their small fort from which they traded with the Japanese emperor. So these sort of things, I think that was the beginning of all these cultural links that we still have today.
So like exploration, this kind of openness and kind of
Yeah,
curiosity about other
yeah.
cultures.
And I think at that time, the Dutch also came in touch with bonsai that early on. I don't think we were really interested in it back then, but yeah, I think we've been one of the first to develop that interest in Japanese culture and
That's interesting.
um, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, kind of as we're touching on a few of these ideas, like what words or phrases would come to mind when you're reflecting on your own culture? Any sort of descriptors or adjectives that might encapsulate some of those
Yeah.
ideas?
Um, Let me see if I pronounce this right because I wrote it down. But egalitarianism.
Hmm.
Egal How do you pronounce that
Yeah,
in English?
egalitarianism. Yeah, you did great.
I'm gonna skip that one. I can't pronounce it. But
Yeah.
so being open and treating people from different cultures like you would treat your own people. Connection to nature is, I think it's, even though we like in Holland, we don't have wild nature. Everything is pretty urbanized, but we do have that connection to it. So similar to Japan, I think gardening and keeping flowers and all these things is something that's all over the Netherlands.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, these sort of things. I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for, but
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. I mean, I think that's if anything else comes to mind, feel free to throw that in there. Um, Sarah, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, it gives us an idea of what the Netherlands are like for those of us that have never been there but want to go. And I was curious, in what ways do these cultural values influence your approach to bonsai?
yeah, good question. I think I have my personal opinion, of course, but I think I could tell a bit about the Dutch as well, but I'm not sure if I'm really entitled to speak for the Dutch. But I think we're a bit closer to the Japanese style bonsai. Of course, adapted the techniques to our local tree species, but a lot of these tree species that we have in the Netherlands are the same to Japan. So we have our pines, mostly muko pines, um, maples, and all those sort of trees. So there's a lot of similarities, but I think also in terms of style and the aesthetic that we go for, I think the Dutch go for a bit more like a subtle aesthetic instead of a very wild or extreme innovative approach. So closer to, I'm not sure if you use the term naturalistic, but closer to representing nature and not just a more man-made approach.
Hmm. So I mean,
Man-made.
which it sounds like you're saying it's more in line with traditional Japanese bonsai, the styling, the container selection, the display.
Yeah,
It's more of a reference, or I don't want to say imitative, but it's trying to be closer to that.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, and there's differences too because definitely we like to use more like our local pot makers. Um, so of course we import a lot from Japan, but or we used to, but I think the change now is that we really switched to a European bonsai. So most of the trees, especially here in the Netherlands, but I think the trophy is the main European show. It's right next to the Netherlands. And I think the winning trees are usually more and more getting to be European trees in European pots on European made tables. So in terms of the aesthetic, I think it's close to the Japanese minimalism, the subtle approach to bonsai, but very much adapted to the European um, environment. So our tree species collected in nature here. I mean, we have not so much in the Netherlands, not at all, basically, but in Europe we have fantastic mountain ranges where we collect beautiful trees. We don't need to get those from Japan, right?
Mm.
So do people in Netherlands, they go and collect outside of the country and then bring the trees back to the Netherlands?
Sure, that happens. I think what happens perhaps even more is that it's more like a trade. So you'd work with local people there because you need to know exactly where you need to collect those trees. And I think only a few people know where it's possible, where it's allowed, where you can get the permission and stuff. So I wouldn't be able to get in my car, drive half a day to the Alps and know where to collect a beautiful tree, right? And I would have no idea where to go to a place where I get permission as well. But someone like Mauro or other guys in Europe, I think Spain is a fantastic place also for collecting material. Um, that's where I would buy my trees as well.
Okay, so when you're saying you said trade, so I was curious, like going back to your kind of Dutch trading. So is it more just like a purchase, like you'd be
Yeah,
purchasing,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you
yeah.
would be trading
We
like
don't have these mountains, right? I can
Dutch
only,
pots or some other sort
yeah, I
of
can collect
Dutch
stuff
trade.
from gardens, but that's pretty much all I have here.
Gotcha. So you don't see like a Dutch species being used very much in bonsai. It's more European species kind of.
Yeah, I mean the Netherlands is such a small country, right? You drive from the north to the south in maybe 3.5 hours.
Okay.
So our three species mingle in with Belgium, France, Germany, etc. So that's
Mhm.
why I think we have a more European approach because
Mm.
yeah,
Gotcha.
so it's more about I think more about EU instead of just the Netherlands.
hmm hmm cool. So one of the other questions was, so are there any specific cultural traditions or philosophies that guide your approach to bonsai, maybe specifically linked to your own country? Um,
Yeah, I was thinking about this question because I wasn't really quite sure, but we do have a very long tradition of flower production. So the flower bulbs and exported throughout the world. I think it's the Pope that uses the Dutch tulips and stuff, right? So all these things, I think that does help. It's same with garden design, which has always been there's always been a Dutch stream in garden design as well. I think the flower arrangements very much related to Ikebana. These sort of things have always been culture, and bonsai, of course, is something that's much more recent than all these other things.
mhm. So bonsai is kind of a component of the gardening culture within Dutch
Yeah,
or the
that's it. Yeah,
Netherlands that has kind of always been a part of that.
yeah.
Um, but cool.
Well, yeah, only for the last, say, what, 150 years tops. I mean, not even perhaps. Like, bonsai didn't spread outside of Japan and China that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, how long has bonsai been practiced in the Netherlands, at least that you're aware of? Like, when do you think it really kind of got
I
popular?
should check my articles on bonsai history. I'm not quite sure, but it's I think when was the Paris World Expo? Was it 1900
Yeah,
something?
somewhere
I'm
turn of
not.
the century, late
Yeah,
1800s.
exactly. Yeah, that was one of those milestone events where Europe got in touch with bonsai and it started to spread and
Mhm.
people got interested in it. Before that, people would travel in Japan and see it, but those moments and the first books were also early 1900s. So um, I think that was really the start of the spread of bonsai outside of Japan.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So when you're looking at, so this is something that's pretty unique for you. You've traveled around the world. You've videotaped or you document all of these shows, all over the world. Probably more than anyone that I'm aware of who does that. So I think you really, can speak to this. So when you are looking at an international exhibition, so whether it's the trophy or other places in Japan or China, wherever, can you determine the country of origin of a bonsai based on its styling? Not necessarily its species, because you can kind of narrow that down
Yeah,
a little bit, but like if you see a tree and some of the people have talked about it as like, oh, I can tell it's an individual. Like I know that person's style, so I know the individual. But also like looking at it, can you kind of get a feel for like a Taiwanese exhibition? All the trees have these certain characteristics versus
yeah,
a Chinese exhibition.
yeah.
Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's for some countries it's quite easy to see. I'm not sure if I could mention like the characteristics, but definitely the Taiwanese style bonsai is something that really stands out.
How would you
Uh,
describe that? How would you describe Taiwanese style?
um, well, one of the things that struck me is the beauty of their trees, like crazy ramification, like something that even in Japan you wouldn't get at all. Also, the really fantastic deadwood. Um, so the super high level trees, also often planted in quite nice pots, not as much as in Japan, but placed on. If they are placed on a table at all on display, it would be a scratch table with no scroll, no accent plant. So display is not something that at least that I saw they cared about much, but the quality of the trees was unrivaled. Um, so that's like the main show in Taiwan is the Wafong, um, which is a yearly event. And yeah, these trees they're different every year, but they are the same style. You can really easily see it's a Taiwanese style bonsai. If you go to Bonsai Empire website and um, search for Taiwan bonsai or something, you will really see what I mean. Like this wild twisting trunks and fine ramification. Um, Tree species, like you said, there's a few very common. Like ficus is one of the big ones, but junipers as well. Um, Last year, I visited Indonesia for the first time, like officially on a bonsai trip, and went to one of their main national shows, which again is a very different style bonsai, mostly because it's tropical trees and subtropical trees, so a lot of premna, ficus, hibiscus, also crazy beautiful ramification, wild shapes, um, and they get to these really well-developed trees in very like they get there very quickly because their growth season is so very long. Um, and again, a little bit similar to Taiwan, I don't think they care about like Japanese style display at all. It's really about the trees and um, yeah, not as much for like other items in the display. No accent plants, no display tables. Also the pots, sometimes the most beautiful pots will be planted in an almost like a concrete poured pot.
Hmm.
Uh, but the trees were fantastic. And then the Japanese shows, of course, is something that I mean that's on another planet still.
Hmm.
Uh, European shows I can tell you about, of course, but these are
Yeah,
the
yeah, I'd love to like, especially the trophy. It's like, can you go into a show and identify like a Italian tree from a Spanish tree, from a Dutch tree, from an, like, can you get that granular in your
yeah.
kind of assessment of that, or is it more like a European style?
No, there's differences between the countries for sure. Um, the problem with all this is that in Europe I know most of the trees, so it's hard for me to like still see a tree that I've never seen before at a prize-winning level in the trophy. So I would know it's a Spanish tree because there's maybe 10 people in Spain that practice bonsai at that level.
Hmm.
Same in Italy and other places. But no, I think the Italian style is a little different from the Spanish style, and also yeah, different places where they get their trees from nature and stuff. So already the starting point, like the collecting trees and in what kind of mountain ranges they are collected, what tree species these are, I think that's already determining a lot about the style of the country.
Yeah, so what would be some of those broad brushstroke kind of differences between Italian, Spanish, German, if you had to quantify that?
Yeah. Let's see if I made some notes on that because this is one of the
I mean, one of the things as a total outsider from the European, just to get the ball rolling, is, it seems that Italian trees tend to focus much more on the size of the trunk. They're very powerful trunk.
yeah,
Um, larger trees rather than smaller trees in
yeah,
general tend to be favored. And then I don't know what it is, but the shaping of the silhouette, the overall crown is sort of very geometric. Like it's
yeah,
very like consistently smooth where you don't have kind of a lot of in and out kind of breaking within that silhouette. It's very
yeah,
like
yeah,
so just broad brush strokes. It's like, oh, if I see those things, it's probably Italian. So anyway, things like
yeah.
that, like you might notice of each
Yeah,
other.
I wouldn't be exactly sure. Like the Spanish top trees that would be able to win the trophy also are big and powerful trees. Like the prize winning trees at the trophy in the recent years have always been powerful trees, and that has a lot to do with the judging as well. I don't
Mhm.
think the audience would always pick the same tree as the main winning tree. As the random four judges that every year are demonstrators and then also judging the show. So it depends a lot on who's there judging, but
Even aside
always
from
get to it.
the trees, just looking at like what's in the show, right? People
Yeah, exactly.
push like
Yeah,
trees and their country of origin, even without
exactly.
the
I get
quality.
your point. Yeah. So to me, the Italian style bonsai is perhaps a bit more like dramatic, twisting trunks. So that, yeah, not. Yeah, no, I think it's really hard to generalize these things.
Hmm.
Uh, but for sure, one of the differences is that in Spain they have these beautiful Mediterranean species as well. So olives, for example, of course you have them in Italy as well, but I think in Spain and also Mallorca, there's a lot of these really beautiful, super wild olives that are great for bonsai and always make it to the shows as well. Um, yeah, lots of deadwood as well in Spain. So that might be something that's a little different from Italy, but yeah, it's really hard to keep these stylistic differences apart from between these countries because they are quite similar in the end, I think.
So it sounds like though that's kind of where I'm trying to bump up against the challenge of can you distinguish style from plant species, and especially if the environment is shaping the material and the material has its own style, which is indicative of where it's from, then it's almost I don't know if it's impossible to disassociate the plant, the trees
Yeah,
from the style, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Graphically, right?
Yeah, especially, I mean, the top trees that make it to the show are almost always collected trees that, have a lot of character before they were dug out from the mountain at some point. So then it's only the artist that adds on the shape of the foliage. So perhaps in Italy it's a bit more angular, and in Spain it's a bit more, well, not as um,
Maybe softer.
symmetric, but it's, yeah, to me it's perhaps it's also like the eye that looks at the trees. Someone else would see something different as I would, but I think I can't see past the origin of the tree, which usually is the trunk, and that's the main thing, right? That our eye draws to, and that's what nature made. So then it's finding the angle, finding, and then adding the branches in the place where you want it. But that's all added, and this is where you could see differences between most Italian masters versus the Spanish masters, perhaps. I'm not sure if I would be really, like, without knowing a tree, if I would really be able to tell apart these things.
You talked about, the fact that you know all of these heavy hitters because there's just such a small collection of them. Have you seen that there's been some popularity gained in the bonsai world in the UK? Have you seen a growth in attendance with people submitting trees and just especially in the kind of younger generations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say like UK specifically, or?
Yeah, yeah, and especially in the shows that you attend.
No, yeah, so EU then,
Okay, sure.
or
Yeah.
I'm not sure what your
Yeah,
interest.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, so also based on the statistics that I can see from my website, um, which is, Bonsai Empire is a website that caters to beginner, intermediate level, and of course also to people who are a bit more advanced in their bonsai. But a lot of beginners, so if you Google for bonsai or help, I have a bonsai tree or how to take care of it, you would probably land on my website. And I do see traffic still rising in Europe. A little less in the USA, but Europe still seems to be growing in popularity with young people. Um, I think social media helps as well, and YouTube, of course. But I think one of the differences also when you look at what's happening in Japan, where bonsai for a long period was not considered to be something cool. It was more considered to be an old man's hobby. Slowly, but steadily, it is changing. Um, but this is a whole story in itself, I think. But in Europe, it's been something cool ever since Karate Kid, the movies, and um, that's also my generation. I started at 15 when I saw these movies, and I was like, oh man, I need a bonsai tree as well. I also went in to do karate, but karate didn't stick, but bonsai kind of did. Um, so yeah, I still think there's a gaining popularity, or at least it's stable.
Yeah. Do you see that there's a difference in the bonsai that are submitted in the younger generations and how they're styling their trees versus those that are in those like top three category, those three that are winners? Like, is there a difference in the generational cultural?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if they will be prize winning, because most often the younger people don't have the budgets that some of the older collectors have, of course. I mean, so the winning trees, I think, often are uh, not young people who are, trying different things, but younger people in shows. Like, one name that comes to mind is Nick Rossman in Europe. I think he comes from a place where he knows the rules, respects it, but also tries how to do things different, and that's happening a lot with young people. So yeah, sure, you see more wild things, more innovative things happening with younger people usually, and in Europe, I think that's the case as well.
Hmm.
Hmm. Um, let's see here. So checking my questions.
Kind of
Yeah,
covered these.
yeah. I guess we kind of touched on tree species too, and just kind of like locally, what are kind of the favored? Are there any favored species, that are really popular among people in the Netherlands? Like, is it predominantly Chinese junipers and Japanese maples, or maybe also speaking to the difference between beginners and advanced
Yeah.
practitioners, right? Like, is it more, or are there kind of the European species are preferred throughout the kind of cross section of people from beginners to advanced? Like, how does that kind of look?
Yeah, sure. I think this is not only European, but very much the same for the US and other countries outside of Japan. If people, young people usually starting out with bonsai, maybe they got it as a gift or they bought it in some store. Usually, then it's an indoor bonsai. I think that's how most people get started. So, say it's a ficus or a Chinese elm or Carmona, some of these popular tree species to be kept indoors. Um, the moment you start becoming a little bit more serious about bonsai, I think most people in our climates would start working on outdoor bonsai, which are just a bit more interesting. And then popular in Europe would be junipers, very much maples. Beech and hornbeam would be a bit more like our local things as well. Scots pine, if you're already like progressing towards at least the intermediate level. European larch, yeah, these sort of. So I think there's still a lot of similarities in terms of tree species with the Japanese. They would have a lot of beeches, maples, pines, junipers as well, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. What are there regional shows in the Netherlands? Like, are there club shows? Are there
yeah,
smaller shows? Like, how are those structured, and what are the trees like that like within the community? Because professionals are few and far between in any country, and
yeah.
so like it's mostly the practitioners, like the hobbyists, that are the most prominent and that kind of make up the biggest cross section. So at these club shows or within clubs, like what are they valuing? Do they when they see a tree, are they much more drawn to the traditional form of like, oh, that's better than like, I guess within those smaller communities, are they valuing anything that's unique, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
question. I think it depends very much. Like Holland is set up with, I think perhaps 15, 16 bonsai clubs. Some of them have their own shows, some of them work together. So there's a lot of regional shows. I think there's maybe one or two relatively larger shows in the Netherlands every year as well. But like professional practitioners wouldn't put their trees in there, so that they would compete or show their trees on a European level. Um, but it's also the more like the hobbyist or club member who would display trees. Yeah, I think it's a mix then. So it's very personal. Some people would prefer their more calm, traditional, more Japanese influenced aesthetic perhaps, and some would really experiment with a lot of different styles and but tree species wouldn't be that different because we all in the end work with similar species here. Like it's not tropical, it's all
Hmm.
for our local climate.
Hmm.
But the level overall in these exhibitions is completely different from what you would see at the trophy, for example.
Right, because there's people who are at the trophy level, and but then there's also like really good hobbyists. They're
Yeah,
not big brand new beginners, but they're kind of at the top tier within the club, but they're not full on
yeah.
professional. And so those people's trees in the Netherlands, do those also tend to kind of adhere more to like the traditional Japanese styling, you would think?
Yeah, it's that I keep like it's so hard to generalize because I know most of these people and I think there's a split and it depends on their personalities and their
Mhm.
personal um um yeah to what they like. And so I'm in a split of like a 50-50 here. So some of them really go for really well balanced, subtle trees that are planted in Japanese pots and like all the way the Japanese aesthetic, and some others would only use like local potters and um, yeah, so and go for more free styles.
Okay.
But all like people are a little bit more serious about bonsai. The material they work with often is material that was or originated from outside the country because Holland doesn't have mountains. So we can have beautiful maples and larches, etc. But if not an impressive Scots pine, for example, you would have to buy it at the trophy or I mean, the trophy has 150 trade stands, so there's always something you can find from Spain, from Italy, wherever.
And are people preferring for deciduous, like is it mostly imported Japanese material like maples and beech and hornbeam, or is it native
Yeah,
deciduous?
also a mix. It's not one or the other. So um, there's definitely a lot of importing still going on. I think it has been like that for a long time, and it's relatively easy to do with deciduous trees as well. So sure, there's a lot of imported material, but definitely also people that have been practicing bonsai for 25 years and still have their trees they started off from seed or cuttings. And um, again, here some people just prefer to buy something that has potential and go from there,
Mhm.
and some other people much rather grow their own stuff and stick to it for a long, long, long time. Uh, I personally do a little bit of both as well, but
I was going to ask you is like, how do you approach bonsai? Like, how do you would describe your own style or preference or taste? Do you lean more 50-50 or, what really and gets you going?
yeah, I'm also more for the subtle approach in terms of the aesthetic. So I very much like the Japanese aesthetic. If you would ask me what my favorite bonsai shows or favorite bonsai place are, definitely Japan. To me, it's still on a different level because we are not close to their level of display and how much eye for detail and how much attention they put in um, going for like a seasonal display of seasonality in their displays as well. We still have a lot to learn there. Um, so yeah, my personal preference definitely the Japanese aesthetic.
Mhm.
Not as rigid as the Japanese would go for their own style for sure, but the aesthetic, yes.
Cool. Um, so you want to take this question, the number
Yeah,
10?
I love this question.
Yeah.
So, the question is, how is bonsai perceived by the general public in Holland today? And is it considered a traditional art form, a hobby, a spiritual practice, or something else?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's going to be a hobby. How hard we try to, or like our community, for bonsai to look at it as more like an art form or living art is what I always like put on my homepage of Bonsai Empire because I think that's what it is. Something that keeps evolving and changing, but it's to me it's an art form for sure. But I think like people that don't know bonsai and would walk in my garden and see the trees, they would say like, "Oh, it was a interesting hobby." And if I would tell them that I make my living on bonsai, on running a community platform, basically a teaching platform that the Bonsai Empire is, they would be like, "Oh, really? You can make an income of that?" So people definitely think it's a hobby. Um, but if they would walk in a show and also something like the trophy, you would easily see that it's a lot more than just a hobby. But I think first reaction, people across the world, I think is always the same. It's always a hobby until you go to a show or what's the bonsai exhibition Ryan Neal organized it once in an art museum of Portland. I
Mhm.
mean, if you walk in there, you would understand it's not a hobby; it's an art form. And there's other shows, of course, as well. But yeah, that's I think the bonsai community wants to approach it as an art form for sure.
Yeah, kind of on that note is the idea of like how the perception is changing both locally, like in your own region and maybe in Europe and then globally. And so, have you seen any changes since you started Bonsai Empire, like about how people perceive it, or maybe even how it's viewed? Yeah, how it's viewed, and kind of what sort of causes do you think are sort of leading to that change, if any?
Yeah, I think we're much more serious about bonsai as an art form now than we were 20, 25 years ago. Um, so when Bonsai Empire started out 25 years ago, and also the books that were available to me back then were all like very basic, almost still like not like it was 100 years ago, like translations from Japanese books, but still very close to all the things that we just copy pasted from what they said in Japan. And we figured out a lot more about bonsai as an art form, but also the whole horticultural part of it. So I think we're a lot more serious about all the different aspects of bonsai these days than we were 20 and not 20 years ago. Um, Also, I think with the internet, that really helped. A lot of people active on YouTube, all these online learning platforms. Same for us, right? 20 years ago, you wouldn't be able to do an online course with Masako Kimura or Suzuki, and all these things have become available. So I think there's so much more information these days than 20 years ago when you just had some books that were of medium quality, most of them.
Hmm.
So that changed a lot, I think, the accessibility of quality information. And that also translated into much more beautiful bonsai, I think, than 20 years ago. I mean, it's hard to look at trees from 20 years ago and because styles have changed, perhaps. So I wouldn't like a tree that one I showed maybe 20 years ago, perhaps. But I do think that the quality went up a lot. And 20 years ago, Japan was on all terms another world in bonsai in terms of the quality of the trees and displays, etc. And I think these days there's a lot of European trees who could be who could rival in terms of aesthetic quality um, to what we would see in Japan, or at least we're a lot closer than we were 20 years ago.
And that, it sounds like for that matter, like Taiwanese trees and Korean trees and these other Asian countries too are producing trees that are just as good.
Yeah, well, they've been good for a much longer time than
Yeah,
we have.
that's one of the questions that I'm trying to roll around too, is like, is that a factor of a country or a culture getting its own unique identity is time? Because we have Japan and China and all these Asian countries have been practicing bonsai for so long that over
Yeah,
time it's allowed for this unique kind of cultural identity to kind of come up to the
absolutely.
top. Whereas,
Yeah,
usually you're imitating bonsai when you first start out, you're kind of replicating the
yeah,
Japanese framework, and then over time, like you're sort of saying, things start to evolve, and like whether it's art or whether it's like soccer, like a game, like it becomes a part of the own cultural identity rather than it being kind
yeah,
of a foreign thing. And so I don't know if there just hasn't been enough time in for bonsai in the West for it to have to have a very distinctive Dutch style or American
yeah.
style, or so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's absolutely the case. And also
Mm.
the level and the quality of bonsai in any country can only go up if there's enough practitioners, if there's enough specialization as well. I mean, only recently do we have a few people in Europe that are specializing in that wood, or do we have like these days we have hundreds of potters in Europe and quite a few very serious as well. But that wasn't the case 20 years ago, right? So all these things need to develop. All these different pillars of what makes good bonsai need to develop over time.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's happening right now because bonsai is just popular. There's a lot of money available in the art form now in Europe, and I think the same in the USA. So in the West, let's say. But you need to have that for quite a while to develop an art and to be able to have a few experts that really can make a living of just doing beautiful bonsai, right? So the more people that can do this as a full-time thing, the higher the level will go. But I think we'll need a few generations to really get to that final level. Whereas in Japan, it's the world upside down right now. Like most of these very famous and beautiful gardens that have been producing top bonsai for what 4 or 5 generations can't find someone to take over. So some of these places are just shutting down and selling off their trees, and that's happening as well. So
Mm.
yeah, you need sort of a golden age to get bonsai to grow into something that's much better than it is these days. And I think it's happening right now in Europe, and I think it's happening in the US as well. And in Japan, I hope, and it seems that it's the tides are turning, or the how do you say, the situation is changing again for the good. But I hope it's in time because it would really be dramatic if in 10 years from now I would visit Japan and there's just a lot of these beautiful gardens that are legendary memories from the past, but are not available anymore.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
Well
So,
said.
do you have any other questions that you come to mind while we were chatting at all?
No, you've just made so many beautiful points, though, Oscar. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear your point of view, just because you've had so many travels and you've got such a wealth of knowledge on bonsai
yeah,
from.
it's easier for me to talk about international stuff than just Dutch because
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm not
yeah.
that focused on the Dutch market, to be honest, as well.
Yeah, I think I just come from a place of I'm a millennial, so I'm just always curious of the accessibility, especially when it comes from like a generational thing and just from a social and economical thing because it is such a lucrative and it can be so costly. And so
Yeah,
I think I tend to be somebody who really prides themselves on trying to find a way to speak about bonsai when it comes to accessibility and the fact that it can be really difficult to get into and then
yeah,
get to a top shelf place, right? Because of the
yeah.
importance of it. And so I don't know if you could speak to that and how, yeah, just how someone can
How to
how
make
can
it more
someone get to
accessible?
the caliber of prize winning bonsai when your pockets aren't as deep as they should
Yeah.
be. Yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah. So you want me to reflect on that, or you mean? Or...
if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, no, I think that learning part and taking someone who's showing an interest, who's starting out with bonsai, taking him or her by the hand and trying to get them to be as enthusiastic about bonsai as I am. That's I think where it all starts, and that I think that has been the role of Bonsai Empire for the last 25 years. So like we were always our core is helping people who are um, not in the know yet about all the bonsai care techniques and don't have a big budget to get them started, right? To get them motivated to grow stuff themselves, to move from that indoor bonsai, which is in front of your south-facing window, just sitting there being beautiful, but you can't do much with it, and to try to make trees yourself. And I think that's been the goal. And sure, sure bonsai can be a somewhat difficult hobby because there's many different aspects to it. I mean, you need to know about horticultural parts, but also about the aesthetic and about yeah. So that there's many different things that you need to educate yourself about before you can start making a beautiful bonsai. And of course, then you need budget as well. If you're growing it from a cutting, you'll need 20 years before it's going to look really beautiful. And most people do prefer to buy something that has a bit more potential to skip the first 15 years. But yeah, there is a lot of beginners who, and same for me, who just started out being enthusiastic, learning about it, and then take it from there, take it step by step. These right now, yeah, the 2025, there's a lot more quality information available than there was 20 years ago. So it is easier than it was 20 years ago, I'm sure. But yeah, only few people do make it past that first, you know, one or two trees that they have in their garden. I think Bonsai Empire has well over 1 million visitors every month, unique visitors, and that's not nearly how many people are serious about bonsai. So it's hard to get people to really progress in the art.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's partly why, at least for us at the museum, we're trying to do things like this exhibition where people might be interested in soccer. You know, there's a lot more people who are interested in soccer than in bonsai.
Yeah,
So trying to maybe find a way to connect the dots for someone to understand like how things move through cultures and how there become kind of unique expressions and there's something, bonsai is connected to soccer in some way that might hopefully give people, if nothing else, a better appreciation for it rather than thinking that it's just a gardening hobby or something like that. That it
yeah,
actually is connected to a lot more things that other people might be interested in. And so, yeah, well, thank you so much for taking your time and chatting with us about this. And yeah, you give us a lot of food for thought. And kind of maybe offline, I'd love to talk to you about any other people in the Netherlands who you think might be able to speak on this as well.
yeah,
But yeah, hopefully you can get over here for the World Cup or to see the exhibition.
yeah. I'd love to, dude.
But yeah, do you have any final thoughts at all, Sarah?
No, but thank you for Bonsai Empire. I do use it,
Yeah.
the resource, constantly for myself and for others who are asking about
Oh
resources,
gosh.
on behalf of the museum. It's such an asset. So thank you.
Ah, you're too nice. Thanks. I really appreciate it. No,
Yeah,
thanks for having me, guys. Really
yeah,
enjoyed it.
appreciate it so much, Oscar, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
All right, so we can end it here.
Yes.
Just end.
Mhm.
Oh, there we go.